The wealthy man glanced back one last time, his twin daughters left alone in the dark forest. He didn't see the brown horse watching from the shadows, and what it did next would change everything. The forest was silent, except for the rustling leaves and the distant howl of wolves. 10-year-old twins, Mia and Lily, shivered under a tree, clutching each other. Their father's car had vanished down the dirt road, leaving them with nothing but a small bag of bread. Tears streaked Mia's face as she whispered, "He's not coming back, is he?" Lily shook her head, too afraid to speak. Suddenly, the bushes parted. A tall brown horse stepped forward, its dark eyes locked on them. It wasn't wild, its coat was too clean, its stance too calm. The horse nudged the bread bag with its nose, then turned, as if waiting. Mia hesitated. "Do we follow it?" Lily gripped her sister's hand. "What choice do we have?" The horse led them deeper into the woods, where the trees grew thicker. Then a sound. Distant voices. Men laughing. The horse froze, ears twitching. It turned sharply, pushing the girls behind a fallen log, just as two rough-looking hunters passed by, guns slung over their shoulders. One muttered, "Boss said no witnesses." The twins held their breath. The horse stood like a shield, its body blocking them from view. When the men were gone, the horse let out a quiet snort and moved again. This time the girls didn't question it. The horse moved steadily through the dense forest, its hooves barely making a sound on the damp earth. Mia and Lily followed close behind, their small legs struggling to keep up. The air smelled of pine and wet soil, and the occasional hoot of an owl sent shivers down their spines. The further they walked, the more the trees seemed to close in around them, their twisted branches like skeletal fingers reaching out. Lily's stomach growled, but she bit her lip, refusing to complain. Mia squeezed her hand tighter. "We'll be okay," she whispered, though she wasn't sure she believed it herself. The brown horse suddenly stopped, ears flicking forward. A low, rumbling sound echoed in the distance. Thunder. The sky, which had been a dim twilight, now darkened with rolling clouds. The first drops of rain hit the leaves above them, then trickled down onto the girls' faces. The horse turned its head, looking at them with an almost knowing gaze, before nudging them toward a small, half-hidden cave in the side of a rocky hill. Inside, the cave was dry but cramped. The horse stood at the entrance, blocking most of the wind and rain. Mia and Lily huddled together, their clothes damp and clinging to their skin. Outside, the storm grew louder, the wind howling like a wounded animal. Then, over the noise, they heard something else. Voices. "They couldn't have gone far," a rough voice said. "Boss wants them found before sunrise," another replied. Mia's heart pounded. The hunters from before, they were still looking. The horse's ears flattened against its head, and it stepped further into the cave, pressing the girls deeper into the shadows. The voices grew closer, footsteps crunching over twigs. A flashlight beam flickered at the cave's entrance, sweeping across the rocks. The twins held their breath. Just as the light was about to reach them, the horse suddenly bolted out of the cave, kicking up dirt and rocks as it charged into the storm. The men shouted, their voices angry and surprised. "There! After it!" The flashlight beam swung wildly, then disappeared as the hunters ran after the horse, their curses fading into the rain. Silence fell again, broken only by the storm. Lily let out a shaky breath. It led them away," she whispered. Mia nodded, her throat tight. The horse had just saved them. Again. But where had it gone? Would it come back? The rain poured harder, the wind screaming through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, a gunshot rang out. The gunshot echoed through the forest like a crack of lightning, freezing the twins in place. Mia's hands clamped over Lily's mouth instinctively, her own breath coming in short, panicked gasps. The rain had turned the cave floor muddy, seeping through their clothes. but neither dared to move. Minutes stretched like hours as they waited, listening for any sign of the hunters or their horse. Then, through the drumming rain, a new sound emerged. Hoofbeats, slow, uneven. The brown horse reappeared at the cave entrance, its sides heaving. A dark streak ran down its shoulder, blood mixing with rainwater and dripping onto the ground. Its nostrils flared as it looked at the girls. Then it staggered forward and collapsed just inside the cave. Lily let out a choked cry and rushed to its side, her small hands pressing against the wound. "No, no, no, please don't die," she begged, tears blending with the rain on her face. Mia knelt beside her, stripping off her thin jacket to press against the injury. The horse's breathing was labored, but its eyes stayed open, watching them. Then, a miracle. The horse's ears twitched, and with a grunt, it lifted its head. Its muzzle nudged something half buried in the cave's dirt, a rusted metal box. Mia dug it out with trembling fingers. Inside was a tattered map, a compass, and a faded photo of a woman standing beside the same brown horse. On the back, scrawled in pencil, "If found, return to Blackwood Farm." Danger follows. A branch snapped outside. The horse's head jerked up, its body tensing. The hunters hadn't given up. Footsteps circled the cave, closer this time. "Check in there," a voice growled. The horse struggled to stand, blocking the girls from view as a flashlight beam cut through the dark. But this time, the light didn't linger. Instead, a man cursed. "Boss says fall back. The cops are at the main road." Silence. Then the sound of retreating footsteps. The twins exhaled, but the horse remained alert, its gaze fixed on the map in Mia's hands. Blackwood Farm. A place to run to, or a trap. Outside, the storm raged on, but for the first time, there was a sliver of hope. And one terrible question: why would their father abandon them to men with guns? The storm outside had reached its peak, wind howling through the trees like a chorus of ghosts, as Mia carefully unfolded the brittle map under the dim glow of Lily's flickering flashlight. The paper crackled with age, revealing a hand-drawn path leading deep into the forest, marked with symbols only the twins couldn't understand. A horseshoe here, a cluster of circles there. The compass in the box spun wildly before settling, its needle pointing northeast toward what the map labeled Blackwood Farm. The brown horse, still breathing heavily but now steadier, nudged Lily's shoulder urgently, as if telling them to move. Suddenly, the cave walls seemed to tremble, not from thunder, but from something far more terrifying. The distant roar of an engine cut through the storm, growing louder by the second. Headlights flashed through the trees, illuminating sheets of rain like silver curtains. The horse immediately went rigid, ears flat against its skull. It wasn't fear the twins saw in its eyes. It was recognition. "Get down!" Mia hissed, pulling Lily into the shadows, just as a black SUV skidded to a stop outside the cave. 3 men emerged, dressed in tactical gear far more advanced than the hunters before. The leader, a broad-shouldered man with a scar across his jaw, kicked at the horse's blood trail in the mud. "Track them," he ordered, his voice like gravel. "The old man paid us to make sure those brats never reach the farm." Lily muffled a gasp against Mia's shoulder. Their own father had hired these men? The pieces began clicking together horribly. The rushed car ride into the woods, their father's strange silence, the way he'd avoided looking at them as he drove away. The horse suddenly moved, blocking the twins from view as one mercenary trained his flashlight toward the cave's interior. Then, a sound that turned their blood to ice. A phone ringing. The mercenary leader pulled out a buzzing device, his face twisting into a sneer. "Yeah, we're close," he growled into the receiver. Then, after a pause, his expression changed. "What do you mean?" The will was changed. The old bat left everything to the girls? A beat of silence. Then the leader's face darkened. Then we make it look like an accident. Both of them. And put a bullet in that damn horse, too. It's caused enough problems already." The call ended, just as lightning split the sky, revealing the truth in a flash of white light. This wasn't an abandonment. It was an inheritance. Their grandmother had left them something valuable, valuable enough to kill for. The horse, seeming to understand the danger had escalated, suddenly clamped its teeth gently on Mia's sleeve, and pulled her toward a narrow crevice at the back of the cave, a passage too small for the armed men, but just wide enough for two small girls and a determined horse. As they squeezed into the tunnel, the mercenaries' shouts fading behind them, Lily whispered the question burning in both their minds. "Why is that horse helping us?" The answer came not in words, but in memory. The faded photo from the metal box. The woman standing beside this very horse. Their grandmother. The crevice in the cave wall was narrower than it looked, scraping against their shoulders as Mia and Lily crawled forward on hands and knees, the damp earth cold beneath their palms. The brown horse followed with surprising agility for its size, its warm breath on their heels, a constant reassurance in the suffocating darkness. The tunnel sloped downward, the air growing thicker with the scent of wet stone and something else, old wood and hay, like a barn that hadn't been opened in years. Ahead, a faint glow pulsed, not from sunlight, but from dozens of tiny bioluminescent fungi clinging to the walls, casting an eerie blue light on what lay before them. A massive, rusted iron door set into the tunnel wall, its surface etched with the same horseshoe symbol from the map. The horse pushed past them and nudged the door with its nose. It groaned open to reveal not the forest, but a cavernous underground stable, its walls lined with empty stalls and faded equestrian awards. At the far end, a single stall remained occupied, the skeletal remains of a horse still wearing a rotting leather halter, a rusted nameplate reading "Midnight" dangling from a post. The twins froze. This wasn't just any stable. It was a graveyard, their grandmother's secret stable. Lily's flashlight beam trembled as it landed on a wall covered in newspaper clippings. The headlines screamed, "Heiress vanishes along with prized stallion," 1978. "Blackwood fortune in limbo," 1985. And most chillingly, "Mysterious fire claims Blackwood Manor," exactly 10 years ago today. The brown horse, their horse, whinnied softly and trotted to a specific clipping, a photo of their grandmother as a young woman standing beside a dark brown stallion with unmistakable white socks, the same markings as their rescuer. But the date on the photo was 1965. A floorboard creaked above them. The twins looked up to see dust sifting through cracks in the stable's ceiling. They were directly beneath Blackwood Farm's main house. Heavy footsteps paced overhead, followed by their father's voice, strained and angry. "I don't care how you do it, just find them, before they find the—" A door slammed, cutting him off. The horse suddenly reared up, its front hooves striking a particular stall wall. The wood splintered to reveal a hidden compartment containing a leather-bound book. Mia grabbed it just as the entire stable shuddered. Above them, an engine roared to life, its vibrations sending decades of dust raining down. The horse shoved the twins toward a ladder leading up through a hay chute, its eyes wild with urgency. They climbed as the first gunshot rang out below, the sound of shattering wood confirming the mercenaries had found the tunnel. At the top of the ladder, Lily pushed open a trapdoor and found herself staring at a pair of polished leather shoes. Their father's shoes. Time seemed to freeze as Lily stared up at her father's polished shoes, the trapdoor creaking under her trembling hands. His cufflinks, engraved with the same horseshoe symbol from the underground stable, glistened in the dim light filtering through the hay chute. Then came his voice, colder than they'd ever heard it. "You were supposed to disappear quietly in those woods." Mia's grip on the leather-bound book tightened as she hauled herself up behind Lily, taking in the scene. They stood in the middle of Blackwood Farm's decaying barn, its rafters strung with cobwebs thick as curtains. Their father wasn't alone. 2 armed men flanked him, their guns drawn but not yet aimed. The brown horse erupted from the hay chute behind them in a shower of splinters and dust, positioning itself between the twins and the weapons with a protective fury that made even their father step back. A gust of wind tore through the broken barn windows, flipping open the book in Mia's hands to a marked page. A will dated the night of the Blackwood Manor fire, leaving everything to "my granddaughters, should they survive the wolves in human clothing." But it was the attached photo that made Lily gasp. Their grandmother standing beside their father as a young man, his hand resting on the same brown horse. Only in the photo, the horse had a vicious scar across its neck that their living version didn't. The realization hit Mia like lightning. This wasn't the same horse. It couldn't be, which meant... Their father saw the direction of their gaze and laughed, a hollow sound. "That old mare died 20 years ago, protecting your grandmother from me." He drew a pistol from his coat. History does love repeating itself. The brown horse suddenly reared, its hooves striking the barn's support beam with terrifying precision. The entire structure groaned as rotting wood split. Then the world became chaos of falling debris and shouting men. A beam crashed down, separating the twins from their father as the horse herded them toward a back exit. They burst into the storm just as a deafening crack announced the barn's collapse behind them. Rain lashed their faces as they sprinted toward the main house, the horse keeping pace. But Blackwood Manor held darker surprises. The front door swung open before they could touch it, revealing a wheelchair-bound elderly woman with sharp green eyes, identical to Lily's. Her hands, gnarled with arthritis, clutched a shotgun across her lap. "Took you long enough," their grandmother rasped. Behind her, the house's interior was perfectly preserved, a time capsule from the night she supposedly died. "Now come inside. We have a will to execute, and a son to disinherit." The horse nudged them forward as their father's enraged scream cut through the storm from the ruined barn. The grandmother's gaze fell on the horse, and for the first time her stern expression softened. "Hello again, old friend." The grand foyer of Blackwood Manor smelled of gun oil and dried lavender, the conflicting scents warring in the air as the twins stumbled after their wheelchair-bound grandmother. Her shotgun never wavered, its barrel pointed at the ruined barn where their father's shouts still echoed through the storm. The brown horse followed without invitation, its hooves leaving wet prints on the Persian rug that bore the same horseshoe crest they'd seen everywhere. The grandmother, Eleanor Blackwood, wheeled herself to a massive portrait above the fireplace and yanked it aside with surprising strength, revealing a wall safe. "Your father wasn't always a monster," she said as the dial clicked. "The Blackwood stables bred champions, but they also bred a sickness. The horses, they remember too much." The safe opened with a hiss of stale air, releasing a smell like old leather and copper. Inside lay a yellowed veterinary record, dated 1965. Subject number 7, midnight, exhibits unprecedented neural activity post-transfusion. Warn family against further procedures. Below it sat a glass vial of blackish liquid that seemed to pulse in the dim light. Eleanor's gnarled fingers hovered over it. Our ancestors' gift. Equine memory transfusion, a horse's loyalty, a horse's strength, and a horse's vengeance. Outside, lightning flashed, illuminating the dozens of framed photos lining the walls. Every Blackwood heir standing with the same brown horse across generations, its eyes eerily identical in each image. Lily reached for the vial, but the living brown horse suddenly blocked her, snorting violently. A floorboard creaked upstairs. Eleanor's face went pale. "He's inside!" The words had barely left her lips when the chandelier above them shook. Their father was in the ceiling crawl space. The horse reared, kicking over a side table to reveal a hidden cellar door, just as gunfire splintered the banister above their heads. They tumbled down the stone steps into a subterranean lab, straight out of a nightmare. Rusted surgical tools, faded diagrams of horse brains, and a massive glass tank holding another brown horse. Suspended in amber liquid, its body bore the neck scar from the photo, its eyes wide open and tracking their movement. Mia gagged. "Is that Midnight's original body?" Eleanor confirmed, wheeling to a control panel. "But his consciousness?" She nodded to their living rescuer. "Transferred. Over and over. The only way to protect us from the men who covet our bloodline." A crash came from upstairs. Their father had found the cellar entrance. The suspended horse's eyes suddenly glowed gold, and the liquid in its tank began bubbling violently. The living brown horse bolted up the stairs to meet their father head-on. Eleanor grabbed the twins' hands. Midnight remembers every betrayal, every drop of Blackwood blood spilled. And tonight? A scream echoed from above, cut off by an unearthly whinny that shook the house's foundations. Tonight, he collects what your father owes. The cellar walls trembled as something massive crashed upstairs, followed by their father's scream, not of anger, but of pure animal terror. Dust rained from the ceiling as Eleanor Blackwood's wheelchair squeaked toward the tank containing the original Midnight. Her wrinkled hands danced across the control panel with practiced ease, flipping switches that made the ancient machinery hum to life. The liquid in the tank drained with a gurgling slurp, and the preserved horse's glowing eyes fixed on Mia. "It's time you learned the full truth," Eleanor said, her voice trembling with something between fear and reverence. A monitor flickered to life, showing grainy footage from 1965. A younger Eleanor in a lab coat, injecting the blackish serum into a healthy brown horse. Midnight. The screen jumped to another date, 1978, showing Midnight attacking a man who looked eerily like their father, his teeth bared in the same cruel sneer. The transfusion gave Midnight a human-like memory, Eleanor explained, as the footage kept changing, showing the horse protecting her from various Blackwood men across decades. But it also gave him a moral compass, sharper than any human's. He remembers every injustice this family has committed. The house shook again, and the sound of splintering wood echoed through the vents. The living Midnight, their protector, was still fighting upstairs. Lily pressed her hands against the tank's glass, staring into the original Midnight's eyes. A strange warmth radiated from it, and suddenly images flooded her mind. Their father, as a young man, pouring gasoline around Blackwood Manor. Their grandmother faking her death. Midnight helping her stage the fire. A ledger detailing payments to mercenaries to eliminate female heirs across generations. Mia stumbled back from the tank, gasping. The horse didn't just protect us. It's been executing a plan. For decades. Eleanor nodded grimly. Midnight chooses which Blackwoods deserve redemption. Your father wasn't one. A final gunshot rang out upstairs, followed by silence. Then, hoofbeats descending the cellar steps. The living Midnight appeared in the doorway, his coat splattered with blood that wasn't his. His breathing was calm, his eyes locked on the original body in the tank. Then, in a movement too graceful for any natural animal, he bowed his head to the twins. Eleanor let out a shuddering breath. He's judged you worthy. But the story wasn't over. The monitor suddenly switched to a live feed, a convoy of black SUVs speeding up the manor's driveway. "The men your father hired," Eleanor whispered. "They'll raze this place to the ground rather than let our secrets out." Midnight stepped forward, nudging a dusty leather saddlebag toward Mia. Inside were deeds, stock certificates, and a plane ticket to Switzerland dated for that night. The original Midnight's tank suddenly cracked, amber fluid leaking across the floor. His glowing eyes dimmed as the living Midnight let out a sorrowful whinny. The transfer was ending. The grandmother reached out, her fingers brushing the tank. "Go," she urged the twins. "Midnight will buy you time, but you must run and never look back." As the first SUV crashed through the manor's gates, the living Midnight turned and galloped up the stairs toward the invaders, his hooves striking the wood like war drums. The last thing Mia and Lily saw before fleeing through the cellar's secret tunnel was the original Midnight's eyes flashing one final time, and the tank exploding in a shower of glass and golden light. The secret tunnel beneath Blackwood Manor smelled of damp earth and old secrets, the walls closing in around Mia and Lily as they ran, the saddlebag of documents slapping against Mia's side with every frantic step. Behind them, the muffled sounds of gunfire and splintering wood echoed through the darkness, each burst making Lily flinch. Then came a sound that stopped them dead in their tracks, a horse's scream, not of pain, but of defiance, followed by an explosion that shook the tunnel hard enough to send dirt cascading from the ceiling. Mia's fingers found Lily's in the dark, squeezing tight as a wave of heat rolled through the passageway. The original Midnight's final act, a self-destruct mechanism to bury the truth. They emerged at the edge of the forest, gasping as cold rain hit their faces. The manor was a bonfire against the night sky, flames licking at the storm clouds. Figures scrambled in the chaos. Some mercenaries on fire, others firing wild shots into the smoke. And there, standing between the twins and the destruction, was the living Midnight. His coat was streaked with soot and blood, one ear torn, nearly clean off. But his stance was steady as he locked eyes with them. Then he did something impossible. He nodded, a human gesture, a farewell. A mercenary spotted them and raised his rifle. Midnight charged without hesitation, his body moving faster than anything his size should. The gun barked once, twice, but the horse didn't falter. He trampled the shooter just as another explosion ripped through the manor's foundation. The ground heaved, and suddenly the forest was alive with movement. Dozens of horses, all shades of brown, emerging from the trees like ghosts. Not wild mustangs, but horses with the same intelligent gleam in their eyes as Midnight. The lead mare, her coat streaked with white scars, stepped forward and nipped at Lily's sleeve, just as Midnight had done hours before in the cave. Mia's hands shook as she opened the saddlebag. Beneath the legal documents was a smaller pouch containing a syringe filled with that same blackish serum from the lab, along with a note in their grandmother's spidery handwriting. The herd never forgets. Join them or outrun them, but never betray them. The scarred mare nudged the syringe insistently. In the distance, more SUVs screeched to a halt at the burning manor. The remaining mercenaries were regrouping. The choice was here now. Inject themselves with whatever twisted legacy the serum represented, or run and risk being hunted forever. Midnight, bleeding heavily from his gunshot wounds, let out one last, shuddering breath and collapsed. But as his body hit the mud, the entire herd reared up in unison, their collective whinny sounding almost like speech. The scarred mare's teeth closed gently around the syringe, offering it back to Mia. Not a demand, a gift. The syringe felt heavier than it should in Mia's palm, the black serum swirling like liquid shadow as the herd of horses formed a tight circle around the twins, their bodies creating a living barricade against the approaching mercenaries. The scarred mare stamped her hoof impatiently, her nostrils flaring as another round of gunfire echoed from the burning manor. Lily reached out with trembling fingers, brushing Midnight's still warm flank where he lay in the mud, his blood mixing with the rain. His eye opened one last time, golden, like the original Midnight's in the tank, and fixed on them with unnatural clarity before dimming forever. A shudder passed through the gathered horses, as if they'd felt the exact moment of his passing. Mia uncapped the syringe, her mind racing. The note said, join them or outrun them. But the third option hung unspoken between the sisters. Destroy them. The serum wasn't just an inheritance, it was a weapon, one their grandmother had clearly used, judging by the way the herd watched her every move. The scarred mare suddenly reared, her front hooves slicing the air inches from Mia's face. Not an attack, but a demonstration. When she landed, the ground trembled subtly, and Mia understood. These horses weren't just enhanced, they were evolving, and they wanted the twins to lead. A bullet whizzed past Lily's ear, embedding itself in a tree. The mercenaries had spotted them. The herd shifted instantly, their formation changing to shield the girls, as the scarred mare nudged Mia's hand, holding the syringe, toward Lily's exposed forearm. The message was clear. Decide now. Then, a new sound, helicopter blades chopping through the storm. Not the mercenaries' reinforcements, but a sleek black chopper with Swiss markings descending toward the nearby field. The pilot's door bore the same horseshoe crest. The saddlebag's plane ticket hadn't been for commercial flight. It was for this, their grandmother's final contingency. The scarred mare screamed in frustration as the helicopter landed, her teeth snapping at the air where Mia had been standing seconds before. The herd's mood shifted from protective to predatory in a heartbeat, their circle tightening. The mercenaries' shouts grew closer. The helicopter's side door slid open, revealing an empty seat and a pilot in dark glasses who made no move to help them. Another test. Lily grabbed Mia's wrist, her voice barely audible over the rotor wash. We can't outrun this. Not ever. Her fingers closed over her sister's on the syringe. But we can change the rules. As the first mercenary broke through the tree line, the twins made their choice. Not to inject themselves, but to plunge the needle into the rain-slick earth at their feet. The serum hit the mud and began to smoke, spreading in inky tendrils toward both the herd and the approaching men. The horses shrieked, not in pain, but recognition. The scarred mare threw back her head and let out a sound that wasn't a whinny at all, but something closer to laughter. The ground began to tremble in earnest now, not from hooves, but from something deeper, something waking up. The black serum seeped into the earth like living ink, spiderwebbing through the mud in unnatural geometric patterns that pulsed with a faint golden glow. The ground didn't just tremble now, it breathed, rising and falling beneath their feet, as the herd of horses scattered in all directions, their eyes reflecting the same eerie light as the original Midnight's tank. The scarred mare remained, her nostrils flaring as she sniffed at the spreading serum, then suddenly bolted toward the burning manor with a purpose that made it clear this was no retreat. The mercenaries who had been advancing froze as the first tendrils of black reached their boots, their shouts turning to confusion, then to horror, as the mud beneath them began liquefying into quicksand. One man sank to his knees, screaming as the glowing patterns crawled up his legs like living vines. Mia grabbed Lily's arm, dragging her toward the waiting helicopter, as the pilot finally moved, leaning out to extend a gloved hand. But just as their fingers brushed, the earth split open between them. A jagged fissure, revealing something massive and metallic beneath the soil, its surface covered in the same horseshoe symbols. The helicopter lurched sideways, its skids catching on the suddenly uneven ground. The pilot's sunglasses slipped, revealing eyes that glowed the same gold as Midnight's. Not human, maybe never human. Lily stumbled back as the fissure widened, exposing what looked like an enormous underground stable. Not the small lab from before, but a facility large enough to house hundreds of horses. Suspended in glass tanks, row after row, were equine bodies in various states of preservation. Some clearly decades old, others disturbingly recent. And at the center, a massive vat pulsed with the same black gold substance as the serum, connected to tubes that ran deeper into the earth. This wasn't just about memory transfer. This was something older, something intentional. The scarred mare reappeared at the edge of the fissure, dragging something in her teeth, their father's limp body. With a toss of her head, she threw him into the glowing pit. The reaction was instantaneous. The serum in the vat bubbled violently, and the suspended horse's eyes all snapped open in unison, their mouths moving in silent whinnies that vibrated the glass. The twins clutched each other as the realization hit. The original Midnight wasn't the first. He was just the latest in a line stretching back further than their grandmother, further than Blackwood Manor. The horseshoe symbol wasn't a family crest. It was a brand. The helicopter's engine whined as it righted itself, the not-quite pilot reaching for them again. Behind him, the cargo hold door slid open to reveal rows of more serum vials, a small army's worth. Not an escape. A delivery. Their grandmother hadn't been trying to save them. She'd been trying to recruit them. The ground heaved again, and from the depths of the facility came a sound like 1,000 hooves striking stone. The scarred mare reared up, her form shimmering momentarily, not a horse at all, but something wearing horse skin like a suit. Then she spoke, her voice rasping through teeth never meant for human speech. "The stables are hungry. Will you feed them or join the herd?" The scarred mare's words hung in the air like smoke, her equine mouth moving with grotesque precision around each syllable. The fissure in the ground yawned wider, revealing more of the nightmarish stable facility below. Endless rows of tanks now vibrating as the suspended horses' silent screams increased in intensity. The serum-injected earth had formed a bridge of glowing black tendrils between the twins and the helicopter, its not-human pilot still reaching, imploringly toward them. Lily realized with dawning horror that the vials in the cargo hold weren't just more serum. They bore labels with names. Blackwood, Eleanor, Blackwood, Mia, Blackwood, Lily, pre-prepared doses. Mia stumbled backward, dragging Lily with her as the scarred mare advanced, her body rippling unnaturally beneath the coat. "We don't want your legacy," Mia spat, her voice shaking. The mare's response was a sound too deep for any horse's throat, a chuckle that made the remaining mercenaries clutch their ears in pain. "Legacy?" The mare, the thing, rasped. "You mistake harvest for inheritance." She stomped a hoof, and the ground responded by surging upward like a wave, carrying with it a rusted metal sign from the depths. Blackwood Research Station, Number 7, established 1893. Equine Memory Retention Project, not their family's work, someone else's. And their ancestors had just been test subjects. The helicopter's blades sped up as the pilot finally spoke, his voice a hollow echo. "Procedure requires live specimens. You will be collected." The words had barely left his mouth when the scarred mare suddenly lunged, not at the twins, but at the aircraft. Her body contorted mid-leap, limbs elongating, jaw unhinging, revealing rows of needle-like teeth that sank into the helicopter's skids. The metal screamed as she dragged the entire machine downward into the fissure, the pilot's glowing eyes widening in what might have been fear before they vanished into the abyss. The remaining mercenaries turned to run, but the ground itself rose up to meet them, serum-infused mud hardening around their legs like quick-setting cement. Their screams cut off abruptly as the substance crawled up their bodies, sealing over their mouths, their eyes leaving only terrified statues where men had stood. Lily grabbed Mia's hand, both sisters shaking as the scarred mare emerged from the fissure, her form shifting back to something approximating a horse. She dropped something at their feet. The pilot's sunglasses, one lens cracked to reveal circuitry beneath. Not a man, not even alive, A drone, a collector. From the depths below came a new sound, the steady, rhythmic pounding of hooves on metal ramps. Hundreds, thousands, ascending. The mare looked at them with what might have been pity. "Run," she said. "The herd always remembers, and the stables are empty." The sound of thousands of hooves grew louder, shaking the ground like an approaching earthquake. Mia and Lily stood frozen, caught between the monstrous mare and the fisher spewing forth nightmares. Then, from the smoke of the burning manor, a familiar figure emerged. Eleanor Blackwood, her wheelchair abandoned, standing tall on legs that hadn't worked in decades. Her eyes glowed the same gold as midnight's, but her voice was human, raw with regret. "I tried to spare you this," she said, stepping between the twins and the mare. "But the stables always collect their due." The scarred mare hissed, her form flickering between horse and something jagged, but Eleanor held up a hand, and the mare hesitated. "You think you control the herd?" Eleanor laughed bitterly. "You're just another stallion in their stable." With a sudden movement, she yanked a pendant from her neck and hurled it into the fissure. The moment it hit the depths, the facility's lights blinked out. The ascending hooves stuttered, then stilled. The mare screamed, a sound of pure, inhuman rage, and lunged at Eleanor. But the old woman didn't flinch. "The serum was never the weapon," she whispered, gripping the twins' hands. "Love was." As the mare's teeth closed around Eleanor's throat, the ground beneath them erupted in a geyser of golden light. The twins were thrown backward, the world dissolving into blinding radiance. Epilogue. Mia and Lily woke in a hospital, strangers in white coats murmuring about miraculous survival and wild animal attacks. No one believed their story, not about the horses, the facility, or the grandmother who sacrificed herself. But when they were discharged, a single brown horse waited outside, its coat unscarred, eyes normal. It nuzzled Lily's palm and trotted away, leaving behind two things in the dirt: Eleanor's pendant and a fresh set of hoofprints leading not into the forest, but toward the city. The stables were empty, but the herd was evolving. Moral lesson. The darkest legacies are not inherited. They're accepted. True courage lies in breaking the cycle, even if it burns with you.